Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Thank You Games. I am Roshan, aka Roro, and I am joined by the man behind podcast PXN. He's wearing the shirt right there. I am his co-host. I am the Nintendo aficionado on the podcast PXN. So I am joined by Daniel Prindle. How you doing today, Daniel?
I am doing great, Roro, and we just finished an episode, and we're just so hyped up. We're ready to go.
Gotta talk about more video games. You can't make us stop
Yeah.
talking about video games.
No, they'll have to drag us away.
Yes. So, as you know, as I told you, we are doing a video series on the channel talking to my video game buddies, content creators in the video game space, talking to them about what their game of the year is for this crazy year that is 2020. Because there have been some pretty good games this year, despite of how crazy 2020 has been. So I just wanted to talk to you, Daniel, about what your game of the year is. So without further ado, Daniel, what is your game of the year for 2020?
Yes. You heard me live deliberate this in my head right before we recorded this, and I'm like, man, you're gonna make me decide this right now. And man, I think I predicted this on our podcast a few weeks ago. I was like, man, this is probably going to be my game of the year. And I had to think about it for sure. But, man, there is no game this year that I had as much fun with. And I think that's the most important thing usually is what is the most fun. And Spider-Man Miles Morales is definitely that game. And it just combines the gameplay that made the original Spider-Man so good and then layers on top of that the additional powers. Like you have the Venom abilities where you have the Venom punch that kind of changes how you interact with certain enemies, which I really love. Changes up the gameplay as well. I love the different abilities that Miles has, like his invisibility. That comes in so much handy when you're in some crazy situations in that game. I love doing that. Just the swinging, the web swinging is still so good. I know Spider-Man PS4 was so good as its own, but like this is different. Even like it's not like they just copied and pasted Spider-Man's animations and all of that into Miles Morales. He has his own unique flair and unique take, and everything about him is unique. And I'm not going to spoil anything of what happens at the end, but like there's a really cool moment at the end where somebody says something that I was like, wow, that is super cool. And actually it reflects like what happens in the game and like how they built the game. So like that whole aspect of it is amazing. The gameplay is awesome. The story I thought was really well done. I didn't anticipate, loving the story as much as I did, to the point where when that character said that at the end, I was like, yes, let's go. Yeah. I was into it. So yeah, that was super cool. Man, and there's just so much to it. It's only a $50 game. Like they lowered it by $20 since next gen 70 now, but it still feels like a full-fledged experience. Like you and I both, I think, played it very similarly. We kind of powered through the story while still doing some side stuff as well, but we wanted to kind of finish that first. And I know from my perspective, it's because I don't want to have things spoiled. I don't want to, look on there and like, oh man, this has been spoiled for me. That sucks. So I don't have to worry about that. And that, yeah, I've only played a small, portion. Even though I've completed the campaign, I'm still excited to go back and play all the side missions, do all the, rooftop challenges, all everything. And just, I feel like with knowing that, like this game has to be my game of the year. There's so many great contenders out there, and there's even games that I haven't played yet, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've only played a couple hours of that. I'm sure I'll really enjoy that game, as well as Cyberpunk isn't even out yet. Obviously, that's out next month, but I will probably enjoy the hell out of that game, Roro. And there's so many good nods to games this year, and even with all the delays, this year has still been such a good year for games.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's, like you said, there's so many awesome games that it definitely is a hard year to to pinpoint that one game of the year that's going to take your game of the year nomination. So definitely, Miles Morales is definitely a great choice, though I completely agree with everything that you said. It being on the shorter side, I was a little bit worried, like, am I going to enjoy it as much as I did 2018? And I think I did more because it was a little bit shorter. It kind of trimmed off the unnecessary stuff that 2018 did with its puzzles and stealth missions. Those were the kind of the weaker parts that I didn't enjoy from that game, that were completely missing from this game. Thankfully, in my opinion, it made the game a better experience, a more stronger experience, where it just focused on Miles and his action and his fighting, and he has his own stealth missions now because, like you said, his abilities with the invisibility, and that came in handy a lot of times as well. So it was really cool to see all those decisions that Insomniac made to make this what I think is a better Spider-Man experience. But at the end of the day, this did just hype me up for the next Spider-Man game, which will more than likely be starring Peter Parker, and I'm super hyped for that.
Yeah.
What do you think? How excited are you for the Spider-Man 2, I guess, from Insomniac?
Yeah, and I think we briefly have talked about this on the podcast, but like, I just want the next Spider-Man game to be a team up of Peter Parker and Miles Morales, because I think that would be so awesome. Have both of their unique abilities in the game and kind of expand on that as well. And you have both unique flares. Like, I love the idea of switching between Miles and Peter, because while they're similar in terms of certain traits, they are very different characters. So like, I would love to see kind of that dichotomy as well, and maybe create some tension between the two of them. I think you could do something there. Like, you always have that moment where two friends like have a disagreement or whatever. You have, I don't know, you have Civil War, for instance, in the Marvel universe. So like, I just think that there's such a very good opportunity there. And I think there's such a good opportunity for more great characters in the Spider-Man universe, like Spider-Gwen or something cool of that nature that they could do, kind of in the same vein as Miles Morales. I think that would be super, super cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I really do hope that they do continue doing smaller, quote-unquote smaller releases like this, like with Miles, for other characters, whether it be more Miles games. That would be great too. I would love Miles to have his own feature length, I guess, quote-unquote game like Peter Parker does. But I would be more than happy with more shorter Miles games, or like you said, Spider-Gwen games, Spider-Noir games. They have so many different Spider-Man characters that they could use, Spider-People that they could use, that it doesn't even have to be in the same universe. They could do a spin-off where it's Spider-Gwen in her New York doing what she does in her New York, and I think Insomniac would add their own flair and personality to that character as well. As I've said a lot of times when I'm talking about this game, somehow they stay true to the character but still change them enough that it's fresh and unique. So like, you're looking at this Peter Parker, but it's not the same Peter Parker that you see in all these other mediums. And you look at Miles, and there's some similarities to Spider-Verse and the comics, but he's still Insomniac's Miles, and you could tell them apart. So I think they do a really good job with familiar characters, but still making them super new to people who are so familiar with them, still making them unique and fresh. So I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like, they're very different than their counterparts that have appeared in movies and everything else. Like, I feel like it's almost relatable to James Bond. Like, there's always a new Bond or whatever. So like, I don't know. It's I love it.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yes.
But yeah, I thank you for talking to me about Spider-Man, Miles Morales. I guess we'll see if Cyberpunk is the game to defeat it, or if you go back to some other games. We'll see. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, on the podcast. But yeah, where can people find you if they want to find you?
People can find me at DanIsDTM on Twitter, or we also host the podcast every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. If you just search Podcast PXN, you can find us on there. And we're on podcast services everywhere, so look us up.
There we go. Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and let us know what your game of the year is. If it's Miles Morales, let us know in the comments. If it's something else, let us know in the comments. But until next time, later will be greater. See ya.
Much love. Thanks for the invite.
Of course.